Gun violence in America. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, gun violence have made a massive impact in the United States of America. In fact, only 10 out of 50 states have the most gun violence due to the violent crimes to the deaths of innocent lives. This goes to show that gun violence is a serious issue and needs to be resolved to bring peace into the country. Although guns can be used in a mature manner, but we must be cautious with such weapons. Innocent lives are taken from the people who use guns as the answer to solve their problems. There may be laws against firearms, but people are not taking it as seriously as they should be. If guns are in the wrong hands, death will continue to rise, and there will be no way to resolve the violence spreading in America. Guns have originally begun in the 1960s, but have peaked throughout the late 1980s and 90s. During that decade, homicides, youth gangs, and suicides have been on the rise, which have caused the number of deaths to increase drastically. According to the National Institute of Justice, about 70% of homicides are caused after a violent domestic dispute, which is the same as from gang involvement. Only 32% of these violent crimes came from juveniles and young adults combined between 1980 and 1994, but 58% were acquitted or dropped in 2000. In the 1990s, this epidemic has decreased. That was because of the Firearms Owners Protection Act, or the FOPA. That law mainly protects gun owners, prohibiting National Registry of Dealer Records, limiting ATF inspections to once per year, softening what is defined as engaging in the business of selling firearms, and allowing licensed dealers to sell firearms at gun shows in their state. Death rates have declined in the same way as the gun death rates by 63% between 1993 to 2000. Today, statistics have calculated only 15,555 plus the daily suicide deaths and different illnesses, and 10,258 victims were killed by firearms. Do you know the saying, if you can't do the time, you can't do the crime? There are serious consequences of using a weapon. Gun violence can affect your housing or local economy, medical costs, public health, and the fear of living. In 2017, a report by the Urban Institute shows that higher neighborhood of gun violence can cause few retail and service establishments and fewer new jobs in the community. The community housing prices have driven people to relocate or moving to an affected neighborhood to keep their children or themselves out of dangerous situations. In 2010, more than 36,000 victims of firearm assaults have visited the emergency room, and 25% were admitted to the hospital. These conditions have resulted in $630 million in medical treatment alone, with people funded by health insurance plus who lacked health insurance. People who were impacted by the epidemic have experienced stress, depression, anxiety, or PTSD, which stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. According to the APA, 87% of Americans think gun violence is a public health threat, and calling gun violence a public health crisis. The effects of this harm extends not to survivors, but to witnesses, bystanders, neighbors, and people who love them most. Living under the threat of guns can affect our own physical and mental health. Teenagers fear a shooting could happen in their school or where or who they surround themselves. It is said that people of color show higher concern than their white peers. These weapons may be dangerous, but there is an alternative motive of why they arm themselves. People use these weapons for self-defense in order to keep them safe or from some or any harm. There are 4 elements of defense: unprovoked attack, necessity, proportionality, and reasonable belief. There are also many weapons for self-defense, like a taser, knife, a rifle, nightstick, tactical whips, batons, or even your own hands, like karate, for instance. In order to protect yourself from the dangerous world, you have to be able to know how to defend yourself and know how to step out of that situation. You can take self-defense classes or practice shooting a weapon at a shooting range. Practice makes perfect in order to know how to deal with the real thing. It takes time to master the skills of self-defense. To clarify what I just talked about, gun violence never solves anything. Every time when I wake up, I watch the news and I end up seeing someone's dead or someone did this, someone did that, results of guns. Violence never solves the problem. To me, I don't like weapons. And I'm more of a lover than a fighter. But guns should be used in the right moment. And I think for my safety, this needs to be addressed. Violence never solves anything. So I hope you enjoyed my essay.